Welcome back to the Music Buds podcast. This is episode number 32, and my name is Henry.
This week, I'm honored to be joined by the singer-songwriter Krigarè. It is so nice to meet you. I really am a fan. I love this music, so thank you very much for taking the time to talk.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Sure. How's life, first of all, for you?
It's weird for everybody right now, obviously. But surprisingly, the last year, I actually have still been able to work, and I've been doing live streams, and I've been able to take care of my band, and I've gotten to write. And so I definitely cannot complain because I've still been able to do what I love in a really crazy year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess kind of kicking things off, how was it that you got started in music?
That's a long story. Here we go.
Please.
So I was raised in a music family. My dad is a touring musician and producer. So I've been on a tour bus since I was 2 weeks old. And so that naturally just kind of threw the bug into it. And there's like 3 different generations in our family that does music. And so you really can't run away from it if you're in our family. But I was really fortunate I was a homeschooled nerd, and I did my schooling from a bus. And when we were learning about English history, we were literally in England walking around the castles doing it. So I had a really crazy childhood that really put the bug in me to like want to be creative and realizing you can do a career that allows you to travel and you get to meet cool people and do cool things. So that's the root of the story. And then I grew up in Los Angeles. And so I initially actually started in acting and not music, even though obviously with my family, you got to do that anyway. And so I did acting really heavily. I strangely enough did some music for a Barbie movie. There was Barbie and a Mermaid's Tale that you can hear me singing a song. And I was like 10. And so I had like little crossovers here and there. And then my family moved to Nashville. And once we moved to Nashville, you're in the songwriting capital of the States, at least. And that's whenever music really took precedent over anything else.
Yeah. Well, who are some people that you grew up listening to? Some artists?
I have a mixed taste when it comes to good and bad. So the good side was my parents really raised me on 80s music. And so they used, like, we were their little like show kids in the sense that they could throw us in an 80s trivia night at young ages and we could tell you the backstories behind everything. So I really grew up on like Pat Benatar and Madonna and Def Leppard, and Phil Collins was actually the main person that made me want to do music as a career. So that was like the good influences. Yeah. But I was also a Disney Channel obsessed child, and I really loved Hilary Duff. So there's a good half and half.
No shame in that.
No, not at all. I was listening to her the other day because why not?
Yeah, for sure. This is the time to do it, you know?
Exactly.
Now, your debut album, the self-titled, I did want to ask you about that because I know that the creation of it has a pretty, personal story because I know you went through a lot when you were a teen.
I was diagnosed with 2 different kinds of cancers at the age of 16. And leading up to that, I really had started to kind of make a name for myself, and I was touring and I was doing the whole thing. And the last year before realizing that anything was wrong was a real struggle because I felt like I was singing through a pile of bricks all the time and I couldn't figure out why. Or I used to sing in an 80s cover band. And so I would do a 2-hour show with them and I'd have to sleep for 3 more days, which made no sense. And so there were little warning signs along the way that we just never thought about. And then one day I woke up, took a shower. And then when I got out of the shower, my neck just swelled up out of nowhere. And still to this day, doctors can't explain why that even happened in the first place. And so, everything kind of came to a stop. And if you're not familiar with where your thyroid is, it's actually in your neck, where your trachea is. And so all this time I was singing through this giant tumor in my neck. And once you remove the tumor, you remove what all of your muscles were taught to sing through for so many years. I had it for 3 years and didn't know about it. Wow. And so once they took that away, and then they also bumped my vocal cords in the process, I completely lost my ability to sing at all. And then whenever I went through a different kind of cancer, leading up to that, I was doing crazy amounts of radiation, and it killed so many brain cells that I lost my ability to play the piano, which I had played since I was 7 years old. And so it literally took back everything that I had trained the whole 16 years of my life. And also just, I was totally that kid where I sang before I could talk. I didn't talk until I was 3, but I sang before then. And so that was obviously my way of communicating to the world my entire life. And then it was completely stripped away. And it really proposed the question of, is this what I want to do? Can I live without it? And the answer was, yes, this is what I want to do. No, I cannot live without it. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it back. And I'm very thankful that it actually came back a lot stronger and a lot better than it was before.
Good. I can't even imagine. Because one by itself, I'm sure it would be tough enough, but having 2 within, such a short period of time would just be crazy.
Oh yeah, it was a total punch to the gut. And I had the final stage of thyroid cancer, which there was only 14 other cases in the world like mine. It's not a normal thing for someone my age to get, and how progressive it was. And then 6 months later, I was diagnosed with the first stage of melanoma, which melanoma is just like, that's a death sentence waiting to happen. And so I remember my family and I were going to take a celebratory trip after the thyroid cancer stuff. I was done with treatment. We were going to take a family trip to New Zealand and Australia as like a woohoo, we did it. And then we found out I had melanoma before I went. And we asked all the doctors, we were like, do we just need to cancel this trip so that we can start doing what we need to do? And every single one of them was like, no, you should go on the trip. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. And then we'd ask another doctor, like, no, you should go on the trip. And we're like, okay, cool. And then we asked a doctor friend of ours, we were like, why is everybody like acting like this isn't a big deal and they want me to go on this trip? And he was like, honestly, because this could very well be your last. And so I didn't know that. That was a conversation that happened with my parents. And so we did that entire trip, not knowing what the future would hold. And I was very lucky that we got it all in one fell swoop and been good ever since.
Gosh. I can't imagine that those feelings. And then also, like, did this album come purely from that? Were these all kind of thoughts during that or after that process?
So I am definitely a hippy dippy writer in the sense of, very often I will go into a session and I rarely come in with like an idea of like, this is what I want to write about today. The music speaks to me. I kid you not. I hear something and it's like, okay, this is what we're writing about.
Right.
And so initially, before that album, I was known as Kennedy Noel, which is my real name. And that music was just pop, alternative pop, really easy listening kind of stuff. And after treatment, I did one EP under that. And then when I was writing again for a new thing, all the sounds that were coming from it were a lot darker, and a lot more cinematic and a lot more intense, which I'd never done anything like that. And it wasn't something that I was really going for. But clearly my soul was writing about something else. And so what's interesting is that, yes, a lot of that album is about what I've been through, but it was not purposeful for me to write about it that way. It was more of my heart and my mind clearly needed to write about it and didn't realize it. And so these things just kind of came together. And so many times I've like gone into a session, done the song, I leave and I'm like, I don't know what that song is about, but that was cool. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, that's what I was saying. Had no idea. Like it's so unattached from me in a strange way. But to put it simply, yeah, it is very much so inspired by it, but it kind of did it on its own. It wasn't my idea.
Right. Yeah. And I think this album really has a lot packed in there in terms of like emotions, because there's like Silhouette, the lead track, it's very quiet and dreamy, but then there will be like, This Time, another song, which has more of almost like a country rock vibe to it.
Yeah.
And so there's like, kind of goes from sad to happy, angry, hopeful. And so like, I just can imagine that being kind of the wave that someone in your position would have been going through, perhaps.
Absolutely. It was totally the full spectrum of emotions, the full spectrum of stories, with also like, it was around that time that I finally got into doing sync licensing music. And so half of that album is all like very, very personal, wrote it because I could, all of that. And then other ones where I was writing to briefs for TV shows and movies. And so these were kind of the songs that just came from, somebody saying, hey, here's a scene from something. Can you write something for it? Which I still am such a personal writer that I end up somehow throwing myself into it anyway. So it still makes sense. Right. But yeah, what I love about that album in particular, being a debut album, I had never done a full length album, not even in my previous projects, is I really pushed myself since I had opened the door to writing for TV and film to see how many characters could I become? How could I push my sound? How could I do these things and really take the limits off of it having to sound like a specific thing? Because I know at the end of the day, I'm at the center of it all. So there's going to be continuity. It's still me no matter what. But just seeing how far can I go in each direction, because who cares? I just rebranded. Nobody knows who I am anyway. So let's just do it all. And luckily, like, people do like the fact that there is such a wide range of styles on it in different areas, and yet it still feels like me throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. And now you have on that album and with other songs, you've collaborated with a lot of really cool artists. Is that like, I mean, I'm sure that being able to do your own song, you know, on your own is great, but also is it cool is it a whole new experience getting to collaborate with people? Because I guess with so many opportunities, the ideas and concepts are kind of endless for what you could do.
Yeah, I had never collaborated with other artists until then. And a lot of those collaborations kind of just came leading up to it, not necessarily for the album itself. But Jennerdyne was one of the first ones that I had ever collaborated with. And we wrote Destiny together, which we, again, weren't writing it for my album. We actually wrote it for his album. He had, I don't remember what it's called, not Chronicles. He had his Chronicles EP, and he had one last song on it, and we were represented by the same company at the time, and he needed one more vocalist. And so they connected us together, and he had a very specific like story for his project. It was called it's like the journey of the hero. And there's like a whole circle of how the story works. And it's actually like a very methodical process as to what each song represents. And he gave me mine, and he was like, the story of this one needs to be about the kind of the fall of the hero's companion. So how the hero ends up feeling isolated or alone, because usually the hero loses a lot of people in the process of saving the day. And so that's what Destiny is about. When that chorus, which was I carried you until I buried you, like, it's a really dark chorus. But it's still one of my favorites to this day, because it really pushed me to do something outside of myself. And so I loved that process of collaboration for somebody else to tell me write like this, because that was really fun as a writer to do that. And then I am like a nerd when it comes to film scores. That is what I watch a movie for. It's just the coolest part of it all. I think music dictating the emotion is so freaking cool, and there's so many cool ways to do it. So with Joseph Trapanese, who did Silhouette, he did Straight Outta Compton and Tron and The Greatest Showman, and like, he's just crazy. He hadn't done Greatest Showman at that time, but I knew him because of Tron. That soundtrack with Daft Punk is one of the coolest. Oh, it's so cool. And my dad and I would listen to it all the time and just nerd out. And so I ended up having a connection to him through somebody. And I was like, I've never asked you for a favor ever. I just want to be in the room with him. Like, I don't need to work with him. Like, I don't need anything from him. I just want to like sit and watch what he does. I want to pick his brain. Like, I will do anything to be in a room with him. And so they connected us, and he was so kind to be like, yeah, let's actually like work together. And he gave me 3 days in the studio with him. And it was just the coolest thing ever. And we're friends now, which is weird to like fangirl over your friend.
Right.
But I do it to his face. I'm like, you're freaking cool. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And so we collaborated and wrote Silhouette, which I've never written another song like that before. And that one, I mean, that will always go down as my favorite song that I've ever written for myself ever. Like, just coolest thing ever. So that was a whole experience of learning that, yes, collaboration is super cool. And I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah. And I with you having touched on film scores, so like a huge part of my episode base are film and video game composers. And so I've been talking to so many, because I mean, I realized that like these people, I mean, I love movies just to watch movies, you know, even if there's no music, but I realized over the years, that's what I've been listening to and loving. And so like, it's so, I totally agree. Like, sometimes I'll just go see a film for a composer, you know, or, you know, and so I'm totally on on that same page. And I did want to ask you about Dreamland.
Yes.
Which is so cool, because it has this, like, you release this kind of infomercial it's like 1950s, super colorful, kind of over the top. And I love that era and that aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
How did that whole concept come about?
The infomercial is like, that was such a project baby for me because I wrote the script for it. I edited it myself. We did all the prop decorating and everything. Like, it was all very much so in-house. So Dreamland as an album has been, again, coming together on its own without me realizing what was happening. And initially what had happened was I just kind of came up with this weird kind of sonic idea of taking 1950s and 60s doo-wop and then turning it upside down and making it kind of creepy. And so I went to a certain producer here in town in Nashville. His name's Willie Breeding. And I presented him this idea. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever. I've never heard anybody else do it, which is equally terrifying and exciting when you find something that other people aren't doing. And we started writing these songs, and they are the weirdest things ever. And as I'm sitting there and I'm writing, I'm like, oh, this is cool, whatever. And then I realized, I was like, oh, crap, I'm still writing about my treatment and what I went through and all this. I thought I was done with that at this point, and clearly I wasn't. And specifically what I started writing about was my final treatment for thyroid cancer was having to do radiation therapy. Oof. And what that entailed was me having to actually be quarantined before people really knew what that meant for a week by myself in my room. My parents couldn't even see me or touch me or anything. They had to drop the food off at the door and walk away because I was emitting so much radiation that I was a danger to the world.
Wow.
And I had to take such a high dosage of radiation that I can only ever take it one more time in my life. It was on the verge of definitely killing me. And I was deprived of every hormone you could imagine, and I was just a shell of a human being. And then I'm locked in my room by myself for a week. And that is a recipe for disaster. And with how far we were already into treatment and how many times I had heard, we don't know if this is going to save you or not, but we might as well try. I was in full-blown depression mode where I was like, you know what? The only way to get through this week is to sleep it away. And even at that, if I do not wake up, I'm totally fine with that. And I thought in my mind that I would be escaping to a dreamland of some sorts. But because there was so much radiation in my brain, my dreamland was just as terrifying as my reality, but it was just different. And I really went through a personal journey of deciding which reality was more worth it to me. And that involved me having to dig really deep and face the darkest version of myself that was ugly and horrible, and face that and deal with that, and then choose to wake up every day and choose to make it through it. So that all happened in a week period. And we now have a 2-part album out of it. Oh. And so that's where kind of that upside down sound was coming from, was I wanted listeners to listen to this album and feel like they were on drugs and radiation with me, because that's what was going on. And so when doo-wop sounds super happy and bright and bubbly, the lyrics are incredibly sad and dark and depressing. And then when this music sounds really dark and weird, it's like kind of a happy story that's being told. And so I really wanted everything to feel upside down. So all of that to say, with the 1950s and 60s sound coming in, naturally the aesthetics started to kind of lean into that realm. And then with the infomercial, that's where it all got crazy, which is what I find the most fun in. And Dreamland is a 2-part album. We're calling it an episodic album. And that's because visuals are equally, if not more important in the process of it. And each song is going to have a video attached to it that seamlessly transitions into the next. And they're going to be kind of like episodes. They're going to be more than just 3.5 minutes long. They're probably going to be around 7 to 10 minutes long. And it's going to tell a full-blown scripted story of a metaphorical way of what I went through, and kind of getting stuck in this Dreamland establishment, which is what the infomercial is Dreamland as this oasis that you can escape to. And it's the ultimate escape that we're all looking for, because that's really what the story is everybody's looking for an escape. But what's the value of the escape versus your life? And so it just, in an upside down way, it takes you through that journey and realizing at the end of the day, it's ourselves that we're fighting, and we have to fight to be our best selves, and we have to fight for our lives to make it through it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you could get more like personal and dedicated than that.
So, it's been 2 years in the process, and we're still not done. So
that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's my baby, and I love it. And it's one of those projects, I believe in it more than anything I've ever done. We're in the process of shopping it to like labels and other places that I can't talk about right now. But we're doing all of that. And I had a specific label that I truly believe is the correct fit for this project in particular. And so we started talking to them and they really liked a lot of stuff. And then all of a sudden they backed out at the last minute. And it was before I was actually able to talk to them personally. And that was a real hit to the gut just because they were like really the ones I was gunning for. But I've been doing this for over a decade. I'm used to no's. Like that's not a big deal to me. But it just really didn't feel right that they were saying no. And so what really was a sign that I believe in this project and myself more than I ever have before is I sent them an email titled Balls to the Walls, Nothing to Lose. And it was a long email just saying, this is what I have done my entire life and worked up to. And this is what I believe in. And I truly believe if you give me the opportunity to talk to you guys, you will feel the same way. And ended up in a meeting and really good things are happening because of it. And so that should just show how much I really believe in this project. Even though it's taking a long time, it's going to be worth it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, it's kind of shows that never quit mentality. And as you were saying, like, you know, this business is filled with people saying no, like, oh no, it's not good enough. It's not right for this or that. And like, for every, 100 no's, you might get that one yes that you fought for. That's going to be, life changing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that's awesome. In terms of like making the videos, I know you're saying you edited the video yourself and all of that. Is that kind of creative process fairly natural for you? Is that kind of like just a natural through line from the music?
So I've always had to be a really innovative artist because I have big dreams and big goals and little pockets. And so, exactly. And so necessity is the mother of invention. So when I rebranded to Krigarè, I really wanted a lot of video content for it. So my mom and I are actually the ones who do a lot of the stuff that you see. And so we just kind of picked it up and learned how to do it ourselves. And that's improved over the years to where I actually like get hired to do things for other people now, which is awesome. Yeah. And so I think because I've done so many different things already in my life, I've had a long career for such a young age. I started in film and television and then made my way to music. And I love every single aspect of whatever creativity entails. So whether it's building the props, building the sets, writing the scripts, writing the songs, doing the visuals, whatever it takes, it's all a different avenue for me that fulfills the creative need. And so I love having my hands in everything, and I absolutely have my hands in everything. Moving forward, I do look forward to the areas that I can pass some things off because it does get very overwhelming, but I also understand I'm a complete control freak. So it's going to be equally hard to give some things up along the way, but I know that it'll help the creativity flow even better than it already is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whatever it is that you're doing, it'll all kind of come, to the same or end in the same place. So
absolutely.
Might as well try.
Right.
And quickly, I did want to ask you about this video that you have, the Take On Me cover, which is like, I mean, the cover itself is fantastic, but like the video, because it has this like sequences of almost pure white, but then it'll have these like explosions of color, and it's so eye catching to be very vague.
Thank you.
I'm sure that must have been a fun video.
Oh my gosh, it was a blast, and it all came together so quickly because I guess now this was 2 years ago. It's so weird to think. But 2 years ago, I got to do our first run of shows in LA, which is where I grew up, and I hadn't performed there yet. And that was a really big deal. And we were opening for a band called May. And so I was working with my band, and my band at the time was made up of two brothers who are fantastic producers, and they were the ones who produced Take On Me. And I went to them because I was like, okay, we need a cover in our set because we're the opener and people need to know things and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted something that still felt like me, like it was a way of showing my artistry in a way that people understood. And to full circle around, I was raised in 80s music. So that's like an easy go-to for me when it comes to covers. Yeah. And so we landed on Take On Me, and I was like, the main thing that I want is I want to do this song as if I had written it. And so that's what we really tried to encompass. So we did this cover. We're doing it on the road, and it's just going over insanely. Like people love it. It's awesome. I love it. Like I have no shame. I make music that I like to listen to, and I have no shame in that. And so some artists are weird about listening to their own stuff. I'm like, if I can't listen to it, then something's wrong. And so I was loving it, and it was just so cool. And people were loving it. And we were like, well, people love covers to be released. So then we fully produced it because we just produced tracks for the show. Like it wasn't anything crazy. So we fully produced it, and then we're like, we need a music video for it. And so we were in the bus driving probably in like New Mexico on our way back to Nashville because it's a 3-day drive. And we were trying to come up with ideas for it. And it's a subtle nod. Not many people catch it, but we wanted it to be a little bit of a nod to the original music video, which was that like really special technology during the time that made it all look like sketch things. And so like in the second verse, you'll see that we did a projection overlay of kind of just like lines and stitches and stuff just to kind of give that same kind of feel of it. And so we wanted to do what we felt like was the 2019 version of the video of overlaying graphics over us and doing it with the creativity of the song and the intensity of the song. So that's like a personal favorite of mine. So I love when people bring it up because not many people do, but that's like one of my favorite things.
No, it's really cool. And like, I always like covers like this because it gives it, not to say that a song like that doesn't already feel timeless, but it kind of gives it a rebirth in a way, in a different feeling, a different style, and so that's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've already talked about it, but with this, past year having been, crazy, have you mostly just been, working on Dreamland or have you been able to do other things just to kind of stay sane, or have you just been mostly focused on that?
Well, I really took on bread baking, so that was a good thing for me.
Awesome.
It really has actually been a mix of everything. It gave us the opportunity to do the infomercial. We filmed that in April or May, maybe. So it gave us the opportunity to do that. And that's my bedroom that you're looking at.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
So we did it in my room. I have a really cool looking room as it is. So it gave us the opportunity to do that and to really dive into those things and create like the postcards and the pamphlets and like all the kind of cool things that we created for Dreamland. But then at the same time, I was contacted by a company called Garena, which is the #1 video game in the world outside of, Fortnite. And so they actually contacted me directly for their game Free Fire. And they said, hey, we're doing a new animation for the new game. Would you do a custom piece for us for this animation?
Wow.
And I was like, this is my dream. I love it so much. Like being able to write to the animation is a whole nother thing. And full honesty, that might've been the most challenging project that I've ever done, because at that point, you're not writing a song necessarily. You are writing to an animation. And so finding a way to tell the story of what's happening on the screen and fitting all the timing cues of everything and it's still feeling cohesive, and like it was challenging, but it was awesome as a writer to be able to have that challenge. And then we strangely filmed a music video for it in the same time. And so we've been able to do some crazy things. And then I do a lot of shows for colleges, and so all of our shows that we were supposed to be touring that year went to live stream. And so I don't know if you've seen the videos of what our live streams look like. Yeah. That's my front living room. And we just I was lucky enough that I owned everything that we tour with. So I had my tracks rig, I had my lights, I had our video stuff. Like we just did it all from home. We didn't want to do an acoustic kind of live stream that a lot of people are doing. We really wanted to make it great. And so there's been a lot of different avenues as to what I've been able to do during all of it. And so that's where I say I really can't complain over the last year, because we have a really great group of people around us and we've been really innovative to be able to take care of our people, which is a big thing. And that was a big priority for me, was I wanted to be able to take care of my touring crew and my musicians and give them as much work as I can, because the touring industry is completely down right now. And so we've been really fortunate to be able to stay consecutive with that. And so it really could have been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah, for sure. And it is cool. I mean, obviously, like getting songs and, movies, TV, while of course, making a living, that's obviously a part of, every artist, but also it is kind of cool in a way, like aside from someone just listening to a song, you can kind of like connect with someone in their living room, like they're watching a Netflix show or something. And so that's kind of just a cool aspect of it that, it just happens one way or the other, no matter the reason for doing it. So.
Right. And I don't know when you're technically planning on airing this conversation, But we are, for you personally, we are doing a live stream in 2 weeks I am raising $25,000 for Raleigh Foundation for Childhood Cancer Research.
Wow.
Who they've been with me through all of my stuff. I was actually doing a fundraiser for them 4 months before I was diagnosed. Like I had no idea that they would be with me through so much. And so because of this past year, they haven't been able to hold their fundraisers, and it's lost a lot of funding for some really, really important research. Research really failed me in my stuff. There wasn't enough research for me to have the treatment that I needed. And so it's really become a goal of mine to make sure that kids didn't have to go through what I went through. And so we've pledged to raise $25,000 by April. Wow. And so we're doing a live stream where we're just doing donation-based tickets where you can donate whatever you want. It could be $1, it could be $500, and you'll get a private link to it. And we'll be doing a few more of those throughout the entire thing of it. But we're finally opening up the live streams to more public because they've been a lot of private events. And so we're luckily going to be doing more.
That's awesome. I mean, like it's just, I mean, it sounds like it's cheesy, but like someone doing that kind of work is so like inspiring because, in this day and age, especially, so many people are struggling and there's only a few options. And so it's really great that you're doing that.
I have made it a real goal of mine with Krigarè meaning warrior and Kennedy means warrior. And that was where the name kind of came together. I am a fighter, and I'm really thankful that I have a fighter mentality, and being a fighter is really, really hard though. And so I really love what I do, and I love, being creative and all of that. But what's the point if we're not connecting with people?
Right.
And so that's why I love touring in particular, is I get to meet people in person and we get to talk. Like I talk about everything from stage, and I really open the conversation to other people of like, the worst thing that we can do in life is feel alone, especially when we're in our darkest season. We make our worst decisions when we feel like nobody will understand and nobody will help us.
Right.
And so I really am trying to break down that barrier of feeling alone and going, hey, look in this room and let's all be honest for a moment and say, we all deal with these same emotions just through different circumstances. And the best thing you can do is not isolate yourself in that. And so I have a real goal and a real purpose to what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to meet people where they're at. I'm trying to encourage them to choose to fight and not choose to give up. And so the purpose behind what I do completely outweighs any of the success that comes with it or the recognition. I actually hate talking about myself. I do really great in interviews because I feel like I'm talking about something else. But in reality, I hate talking about myself or doing that or selling myself. And my team gets so mad at me because I suck at selling myself. But I can sell from here until kingdom come that it's important to reach people and to meet people and to help people and to be real with people. And that's the goal at the end of it. So I'm happy to do anything that's going to lead towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the big moves can help people, but also just the little things can also be such a huge thing. And so, yeah, I totally agree. Well, I mean, we've already talked about a lot is there, and it's really nice talking to you. Is there anything else in particular that I haven't brought up that you'd like to touch on? I mean, I don't want to leave anything unsaid. But,
well, in the meantime of Dreamland being created, because who knows if that's going to be a 10-year project or not, we will be releasing an EP this year of some fun new songs with some fun videos. A little hint, we're going to be doing a Scott Pilgrim style music video, which I'm like stoked on. So we have some more fun projects coming out that won't be the big honking machine, but it'll be good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, it's been so nice chatting with you, and I would love to get you back on some other time.
Yes.
And yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. All right, everybody. Well, we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we'll see you next time.